I'm Tracy with MeatRx. I'm a MeatRx coach, and I'm here today with Coach John from MeatRx. Hi, John.
Hi.
We're going to hear John's success story. And would you start out, John, by telling us what was life like, your diet, your health, before starting a meat-based diet?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a former collegiate athlete. I did shot put in college. I actually threw a little bit after college as well, and been fortunate enough to compete at somewhat of a high level in the past, and was really protein emphasis on building muscle, trying to be strong, immediate energy system type of work. So in that sense, it was a green light to almost consume anything that I could find. When you are trying to be as big and strong as you can possibly be, really any kind of calories were helpful. As long as the weight was going up, the distances were going further, it seemed like it was an okay thing. It wasn't until after I got out of college that holding some of this really extensive weight became a challenge to get rid of, and it wasn't good weight. And it's not always good when you put it on in that fashion where you're really just trying to grow as much as you can. And so prior to finding the Carnivore Diet, I really went through all different avenues to try to improve my health. I was up to 360 pounds. I dabbled in ketogenic style of dieting. Those that are familiar, the anabolic diet with Dr. D. Pasquale. So in that kind of still meat-centric, protein-centric vein, some carb cycling, so introducing carbohydrates in a somewhat cyclical fashion depending on the day of the week. And all those works to some extent, but I wouldn't say that it was ever easy. It seemed like it was always a challenge to try to improve myself. It seemed like it was a lot of work. And of course, that's part of the deal when you're losing significant amounts of weight. But I wouldn't say it was encouraging, even if I saw the scale move.
Okay. Okay, so like, did you have any other health conditions besides weight, or?
Yeah, so I had some painful eczema in my elbows and kind of on my skin that I went to the doctor. Even topicals didn't work. They would go away for a spell, but then they'd come back relatively regularly. And so we really didn't have a solution to that. Obviously, the carnivore diet has changed that aspect of my life in a significant fashion. I used copious amounts of caffeine. It seemed like no matter what diet I was on, I needed to have this energy boost almost all day long. Caffeine or coffee in the morning, energy drink in the afternoon, pre-workout depending on what I was doing for exercise that day. And so that was always, kind of pushed my stress level up a little bit, unnaturally aiding that need to find energy. And then I would say undiagnosed sleep apnea. So being a really large person, you're going to have some of those issues as well. And that was a big factor to my poor sleep. I would really struggle at night, which probably just manifested in that energy loss throughout the day, the following day.
Okay, wow. Yeah, that sounds challenging. So how did you come across the carnivore diet or hear about it? And how
So I saw, like a lot of folks, Dr. Baker on Joe Rogan, and it just started the rabbit hole. You start to dig in, you listen, and you start to, I almost feel like I should have known better when I look back at it. As someone who is educated, I have a master's degree in exercise science. I've been in the coaching realm for a significant time now, as a strength athlete, trying to find all these ways that are to improve your body as best as you can. Now that I sit in this state where I'm eating is in a way that is just so profound for me, to look back and go, why did I not dig in sooner or pay attention sooner to that? So it took a little bit to get there, but finding Dr. Baker, finding Dr. Saladino, listening to their podcast, listening to their guest interviews were really eye-opening. It was almost as though the puzzles kind of finally fit puzzle pieces finally fit together to see something that, like I said, is very profound.
Okay, so how did you implement your diet? Did you start out just eating steaks or?
So I had done some keto prior to transitioning to carnivore, so like a lot of folks that we kind of see in this community, but it wasn't necessarily seeing the outcomes I was hoping to see. And but if I'm already this close, I've kind of gone past that whole I'm not eating carbohydrates period where I'm not feeling bad about that physically. I thought, well, if I'm already this close, let's just dive right in and see what this is like. And just went in and you got ribeyes and ground beef and hard-boiled eggs and regular eggs, and that, all right, we're going to do this. Stepped on the scale once before, stepped on the scale about 3 months later. So made sure that I just really dove in and really gave it its did my due diligence, and didn't get frustrated, didn't worry about the scale, just said I'm going to go and really explore what this is like for me.
Awesome. Did you include cheese at all or just eggs and meat?
I didn't include cheese for the first few weeks. I added it back in and then took it out. So kind of cycled it in and out, depending on how I felt. I felt that the first time I cycled it back, I wouldn't say I necessarily responded the greatest, but over time it's gotten easier to utilize it than maybe that first initial period.
Okay.
And for those that are on keto, cheese is kind of is a thing, right? Like you eat maybe more, and so coming off of it, kind of had a much better experience not having it to first begin with the carnivore diet.
Okay. Was it hard to your transition from keto to carnivore? Did you have any?
Honestly, I didn't. Like I said, it was like one of those. I should have known better. I should have known that this was the way to go. I didn't have any gastrointestinal issues, no irregular bowel movements. It was really just a really easy transition for me. Wasn't really hungry ever. It just seemed like we talk about the micronutrient profile and that being a priority. It was almost as if my body was really craving those micronutrients to the point where it was an easy transition.
Awesome. So can you tell me like the difference between keto and carnivore as far as how your body responded?
I think the largest thing is once I went away from like peanuts and those type of foods and cheese to some extent, a lot of the bloating went away, a lot of the irregularity in any bowel movements went away. And I guess over that overall feeling of being kind of fresh, I guess is the best way for me to describe it. We know when we don't eat something that feels the greatest, we don't feel the greatest, may not just be bloating, but just that systematic kind of down feeling. When I went away from keto and into carnivore and really focused on eating quality fats and a lot of those much more bioavailable foods, nutrient-dense foods, really felt a lot better. Almost from the beginning, my energy levels went through the roof. I was able to transition off of coffee and off of caffeine entirely. And so I still needed those things in the keto space, and not even second thought right now.
Awesome. So like your improvements, you said you had eczema that cleared up, and can you tell me what other benefits you found after going keto or carnivore?
Yeah, so obviously I've lost 50 pounds, I guess, in probably a 4.5 month period, and I really didn't try to do it. And I think that's been the most eye-opening thing for me, is as a big guy who had a big appetite, still has a big appetite, moving away from tracking calories, tracking macronutrients, calorie counting, all of those things that you can get involved in really significantly, and really just focusing on eating until I'm full enough and prioritizing meat. Still being able to I haven't counted a calorie in, I can't remember, 6 months, 7 months. Being able to do that significantly lowered my stress level, right? You don't have that anxiety that you get wondering, did I track this correctly? Am I following this plan that I've created for myself? And then in addition to that, losing the weight really helped my sleep apnea. So being able to be more rested in the mornings coming off of the previous day probably definitely helped me not have to have that coffee or caffeine throughout the day.
Wow, those are great benefits. Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're a coach at MeetRx, and people can find you there if they want to find you to have you do their coaching for them. And can you tell me your coaching strategy? Have you helped other people go on carnivore before?
Yeah, so I've helped a few people in my immediate circle, and have been reached out to via the MeetRx platform. My coach strategy is this is a lifestyle change that you really, it shouldn't be pressure. There shouldn't be a pressure to feel like you have to accomplish something in it. It really is let's look at your body. Let's look at, similar to my experience, where are your micronutrient deficiencies? Where can these really highly bioavailable foods be implemented to your life and have it be an easy transition for you? I feel like having been in a place where, traditional bodybuilding diet, all the different big name, trying those out, there's this framework around each of them that is significantly involved, that increases some form of anxiety because you have to meet these certain protocols. Being able to just say, okay, I'm going to go to the grocery store, I'm going to pick some meat out, I'm going to cook it in the way that I want to eat it, and then have it and not really have to put a limitation on myself, should be the way to go for someone that's looking to make that lifestyle change. I feel like, having been in that position before, that you put a lot of pressure on yourself to have to meet these certain outcomes and results. And in my experience, if you just dive in with some support and commit to it and don't be too anxious about it, you're going to see some truly life-changing outcomes.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm curious to know, did you exercise during your time to lose weight, and did you?
Yeah. So I have been advocate of exercise ever since my days, obviously being an athlete and leaving. So that has always been the similar thing throughout all the diets that I've tried out. I've always used strength training and cardiovascular training as part of a regular weekly routine. So when you talk about having one variable change that makes all the difference, I can say that this is the variable that changed. So I didn't really change the way I lifted, the same way I've been kind of lifting since I've been an athlete. I didn't really increase any of my additional cardiovascular exercise. So it wasn't like I was, if we talk about calories in, calories out, it wasn't like I was expending an exorbitant amount of calories. To be honest, it was probably significantly less than I've done in the past in terms of exercise, and still found such a profound outcome in terms of not only total body weight loss, but body composition change solely from moving toward the carnivore diet. And so Dr. Baker talks about strength training being a great supplement to the diet and not being necessarily a requirement. It really isn't necessarily a requirement. Is it good for you in terms of longevity in life? Absolutely. However, if it's not in your time availability for a certain time frame, and all you can do is commit to changing the way you eat, this will have an impact in your life.
Yeah, I agree. So what does a typical day of eating look like for you?
Sure. So I've done some experimenting over the last 6 months. I've done some intermittent fasting. I didn't start that way. I just ate when I was hungry and ate till I was full and waited till I got hungry again. The term incidental fasting is probably a better way to describe it, because you're not necessarily trying to fast for any significant period of time. You're not hungry. But a typical day, I've actually moved my eating window to the morning. A lot of people skip breakfast and then eat in the evening. And so I've been tracking my sleep and found that in the past month or so by eating in the morning till about noon or 2, and then not eating till the next day has had a positive impact on the depth of my sleep and the quality of my sleep. So typical day, I'll get up. I might do some exercise in the morning, sometimes around 5 or 6 in the morning, and then I'll get a meal in around 8 and try to be done eating by noon or 2 o'clock, depending on the day. If I'm just going to eat, I might just eat one meal a day. If I'm going to do maybe a longer fast, I may eat 2 or 3 meals in a day. Some weekends I might just eat all day if I can, just to see if I can push my calories up a little bit. I know I don't necessarily track anything, but I'm just trying to see if I can eat a little bit more, because I know that I'm going to be fasting throughout the week in a little different fashion. So I would say every day is a little bit different. If I'm going to eat one meal a day, there probably would be a higher fat content in that meal. I might be choosing ribeye over a leaner cut of meat, or I might add some cheese in, just because I know that's going to keep me a little bit more full longer. If I'm going to eat 3 or 4 times in a day, then I might choose leaner cuts of meat, because I'm going to want to add in more protein throughout that day.
Okay, that sounds good. So what would your advice be for someone just starting out on carnivore?
And my advice would be to don't worry about counting calories. Just try to find out what cuts of meat you like, how to prepare them. I feel like if you enjoy eating the food that you're cooking, it makes it significantly easier. So if you have a style of preparation, food prep that you followed in the past that you really enjoy, go that direction. If you're new to it, get some cooking tips on YouTube, maybe get a carnivore cookbook. Find some ways to enjoy the food that you're going to eat, and don't be too concerned about some of the maybe more advanced things like fasting. It's not necessarily a priority when you first transition over to the carnivore diet. Really just becoming comfortable with the lifestyle and giving yourself an opportunity to enjoy the food that you're cooking for yourself.
Awesome. That sounds great. Yeah, I know it's kind of scary for some people to start up a new way of eating, but really we've eaten this way for centuries before our ancestors and everything.
I think that like I said, there's something to be said to going back to that, to maybe a more traditional style of eating. I would say that my grandparents and my parents ate meat was the main part of the meal, and everything else was there were sides, right? Like that's what you would consider when you were cooking a meal, and it might just be one side. So it would be steak and potatoes. It wasn't steak, potatoes, salad, etc. It was meat, potatoes. And I feel like moving back to that direction would be beneficial to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cutting out the sugar and the bad packaged stuff and the bad oils and stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I would say that too. I think that that part of what I found going through all the different styles of eating, as well as the keto style of eating, was the systematic inflammation you get from some of the other things that you don't really concern yourself with when you're eating in a different way, where I'm just going to eat something out of a box, or I'm still eating keto but I'm not, and I'm kind of mixing all of these different things in so that I'm still low carbohydrate but I have high fat. And what that looks like, there is that reduction. I feel like reduction in inflammation moving to the carnivore diet. I feel like that's what helped me with my eczema too. I feel like, to be honest, that's how I feel like that's what the manifestation was of this systematic inflammation. That's where it showed the most. Yeah,
that sounds great. I had the same experience. So thank you so much, John, for coming and sharing your story. And I know it'll help many people, and they'll understand some of the things you went through to get to where you are, to where you had lost 50 pounds. And it's just a great story. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay, we'll talk to you later.